Hey everybody, welcome back to Conscientious Omnivore. My name is Pal. I'm going to be doing a live stream for you about wild animal suffering, and I'm going to try to give my views on this. I was asked to do so by one of the viewers of the channel, Conundrum. I'm going to go through kind of some of the background and the discussion that we had in the comments, and then I'm also going to kind of talk about some of the videos that have been going around lately regarding this topic, and I'm also going to talk about why I think it's really tied closely to antinatalism, elfism, etc. And I'll give my thoughts on those topics as well, although the discussion isn't necessarily related to antinatalism per se, and I do want to get that out there right from the start, but I think it's a pretty key component of what I want to say, and that's why I put that in the title as well. Hey Luis, welcome. So I'm gonna jump right in, and then we will see what's going on. Alright guys, so the background here is that I had a video about what was it? Hey Kathy, welcome and happy birthday. I had a video up about poor people in India being protein deficient, and I got a question from a viewer called Conundrum. What are my thoughts on wild animal suffering? I kind of gave my thoughts, and then he was really kind of asking about what are my motivations, or what do I think, and I immediately kind of think, of course, of like, okay, so if somebody does care about wild animal suffering, what do we actually do about it? So I was talking about interventions as well, but in reply he was saying that he didn't really have interventions in mind. He was just asking that as a separate conversation, and then he gave me a link which is here, and I'm going to share it with you guys and go through it a little bit, and then give a few thoughts. So if you guys want to see the whole comments and read through them, I'm not going to read through them here. You can find them on my video, Are Poor People in India Protein Deficient? You can look through that. And then I also will talk a little bit about other comments I had with Conundrum on my video, Seeing Animals as Individuals. Vegans want to get rid of domesticated animals. Check that one out if you guys haven't seen it. It's a pretty interesting one as well. Generally, hey Jen, welcome. So, the article that I'm going to talk about here to start with is the one that Conundrum sent me, and it says Why Most People Don't Care About Wild Animal Suffering. It's written by a person called Ben Davidow. I don't know who this person is. I've never read other stuff by them, but I did read this one, and basically it's just talking, you can see here the summary, talking about wild animal suffering and going through what they kind of think are reasons why people don't usually consider wild animal suffering, or don't really even think about it, or they don't even know about it at all. So basically, they see it as status quo bias, just world hypothesis, and lack of intentional harm. And they are trying to, I guess, prep the reader for the idea that we should actually do something and should intervene to reduce or eliminate or whatever wild animal suffering. So hey Nikki, welcome. So basically, I actually have a number of issues with this article. I don't think it's really well thought out. I think there's a lot of kind of holes in the ideas, but some of the stuff, I'm not going to nitpick, I think is pretty accurate. They make the case that wild animal suffering is unexceptional, and that people are more likely to think of things that are out of the ordinary, but because it's such a part of, I don't know, kind of like life, that it's generally accepted, you just don't notice it. It's not exceptional. It doesn't make headlines. Nobody really talks about wild animal suffering. So that's one thing. I would have an issue with that a little bit, because I think people do think about wild animal suffering, especially when tragedies happen, so when things are out of the ordinary, but that kind of goes in line with what they're saying. So that's why I'm saying I wouldn't really nitpick this point. Like when there's like a big fire in Australia, and they said close to 1 billion animals died from the fire. that is pretty exceptional. So people do take notice of that. So I'm not going to nitpick that point. I don't think that's totally wrong at all. They're talking about how WAS is not about us, so people are, less likely to treat it as a serious ethical issue because it's not, related to people. And here they make the point that alleging that WAS is a serious ethical issue is a threat to human uniqueness. Now, I don't think that makes sense. I don't think it's logical. I don't think they've really given any reason why I would agree with that statement. But they also bear in mind that this is in 2013, I think, when this article is written. They say, pointing out in 2013 that wild animals, not humans, are the epicenter of suffering in the world is blasphemous in a similar way as pointing out in 1613 that the sun, not the earth, is the center of our solar system. And then they make this statement that it's unlikely, for instance, that an American could be elected to public office if she suggested that addressing WAS deserves priority over addressing gun violence. Now, I think, yes, that would be unlikely that somebody would get elected if they said that they would rather deal with wild animal suffering than addressing gun violence, and I think for good reason, quite honestly. So I don't think this is a very good case for talking about wild animal suffering. So there's a lot of things like this in the article, and I don't really want to go through the whole thing because there's other stuff that I really want to talk about, but one thing that I did want to mention from this article that I thought was like really kind of illogical and not right is this part. They basically say that WAS is unjust, and the just world hypothesis is our innate bias that the world is essentially just. Noble actions are rewarded and evil actions are punished. I don't know what this hypothesis is. I've never heard of it, quite honestly, and I can honestly, truly tell you that I do not have this. I don't know where they think this. I think people kind of want this to be the case a lot of times, and we say like, karma and whatever. And I mean, sometimes, you might think like, yeah, like karma's going to bite you and whatever. And people say these kinds of things. But I mean, ultimately, I think people really deep down inside, they know that things are unjust. They know that sometimes people, get a raw deal and it's not based on any kind of, merit or whatever. I mean, just look at like some serious illness that affects somebody, cancer and, all these kinds of things, like children getting diseases. I mean, like people know that that's not, any kind of justice or any kind of, reward or punishment for something that a child has, like they're obviously innocent. They haven't done anything wrong. So I just think like, I don't know where this innate bias that they point to is coming from. I doubt that many people would have this. Jen is worried about how many tabs. No, you can actually see the last tabs here. It's not that many. I usually have more than this, so bear with me and I'm going to try to go fast. So I just think, again, this is not a very well written article. I don't agree with much of it. I think there's quite a number of things here that I don't agree with. They also make the case that wild animal suffering, because of the sheer numbers, is just like way more important than anything else basically that we should be dealing with, because there's like I don't even know how many billions, trillions of animals, and we're not just talking about the big animals that we can usually see and stuff. They're really including everything, so like all the tiny insects and worms and stuff in the ground and just the tiniest little thing. And if you count all of those, like it's obviously far more than the people on Earth and what have you. So that's why they're making the case that it should be dealt with. Now, I had kind of some back and forth. Again, you can read through the comments if you want in those videos, but the person that I guess a lot of people, when they talk about wild animal suffering, refer to is somebody called Brian Tomasic, I think is how you pronounce it. But anyway, I think, yeah, Conundrum actually thought that this article was written by Tomasic first, which it wasn't. It was written by this guy, Ben. But it's on a website called reducing-suffering.org. And I don't know if that page belongs to Tomasic, but it kind of seems like it, because its most content is by that person. And then there's just other, kind of pieces written by other people. But what I was curious about is, who is this Tomasic guy? And one of the first things that I found when I just Googled him is that, is he a vegan? And he's not. And there is a Reddit thread, or whatever these things are called, he explains why he's not vegan, and I just thought, like, my God, like, how can somebody claim to be interested or care about wild animal suffering and not be vegan? Like, that is just mind-bogglingly, quite frankly, ignorant and stupid. Like, it's just shocking. So this person is basically a vegetarian. They with lacto vegetarian, so they consume dairy products, and it just doesn't make any sense. Conundrum actually agrees with me that this is completely stupid and illogical and ridiculous. But I just wanted to point that out because I just think it really severely taints anything that this website is going to have to say in my eyes, because they're basically saying that. Here, I consume dairy now because it contributes to feeling good in a way that just tofu, nuts, lentils, etc. alone don't seem to offer. Although maybe I'm just addicted or could transition to feeling the same way with a vegan diet, and blah, blah, blah. But he's basically making the argument that it's a relatively low impact from an animal suffering perspective. Now, if anybody is watching this and you're not vegan, please do watch my video that I did on February, like a while back. It was like, I think 2 years ago. I talk about, the ethics of dairy, and I think the dairy industry is actually one of the most cruel animal exploitation industries out there. It is horrifically cruel. It still kills all the animals just as bad as any of the other industries, and in addition to that, they actually have to live for longer with extreme suffering, being impregnated, against their will, and having their babies taken away from them repeatedly over and over and over and over again until their bodies are completely spent, and then they're killed anyway. Like, you cannot, like, in my mind, be this stupid. I mean, honestly, to think that, like, animal suffering of any kind, whether they're wild or farmed, matters, and then to say that it's low impact, relatively low impact animal suffering for dairy. So this person, in my mind, is just like, they're checked out. Like, I'm not really interested too much in what they have to say after that. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Yes, Jen is asking if this came up in Humane Hancock's discussion with Cosmic Skeptic. I don't know. I want to actually talk about that too, just very briefly. The only reason I even kind of know about those discussions with the Cosmic Skeptic and Humane Hancock is because of people like Conundrum asking me what I thought about it, and a few other people have asked me what I thought about it, and then I've seen some of the videos by Michelle Lowe. Shout out to Michelle. Check her out if anybody's not signed up yet. And I've kind of watched her response videos, or actually her critique of the video about wild animal suffering and why it's not a good argument for veganism, and why it's kind of probably hurting the cause when you try to make these kind of claims if you're talking to somebody who's not a vegan and trying to convince them to go vegan. I actually absolutely wholeheartedly agree with Michelle, and a lot of the stuff that she says, I would pretty much just be in total agreement. I'm not going to repeat everything she says because that's kind of pointless. Like, I think just go watch her video. That's 99% of what I thought on the matter. Her latest here, Life is Pointless, that was a video talking about antinatalism specifically. And now I want to kind of bring this around to the topic of the stream, which is do you have to be an antinatalist to quote unquote care about wild animal suffering? Now, I think no. That's why I said kind of, because I think people do care about wild animal suffering. In fact, I think you don't even have to be vegan to care about wild animal suffering. As I talked about before, as Michelle has mentioned in her videos, if you see a really crazy thing like a flood, a fire, any kind of catastrophe, I mean, people will risk their lives to go and help wild animals. People will run into burning buildings to rescue beloved pets, or even just random animals. Like, firemen will run in and save a dog or cat, whatever, sometimes even risking their own life for that. Now, obviously that's not a wild animal. I understand that, but I'm just saying, you can see people going into the bush, pulling out koalas and all these other kinds of animals. And people try to save whales that get beached on the shore, and all this kind of stuff. So it's I think absolutely people do, and a lot of times those people are not vegan. I don't think it has anything to do with veganism per se, but what I say is when when I've seen anybody talking about wild animal suffering and suggesting that we somehow should do something about it, and I'm not talking about the exceptional things like a flood, a fire, etc. I'm talking about the things that are just kind of routine, like part of, you know, life on Earth, which is including the pain and suffering that animals and all living, you know, sentient beings go through, you know, in life. When it comes to actually talking about doing something about it or intervening somehow, that is where I think the only people I have seen make any kind of case for that, they have all been antinatalists. And I've had some videos about antinatalism, and you can check them out. I have one that I would recommend if anybody cares about, you know, what I think about antinatalism. Check that out. It's a response to Inmendham after the failed debate with Logan Blake and Inmendham, and he rage quit before I even had a chance to really talk to him at all. So watch that response if you're interested. I'm not going to go through it here. There was a live stream Q&A that I did a while back as well. About, I would say, half of the stream was about antinatalism. So go watch that one if you care about, you know, my views on antinatalism. I'm not really going to try to rehash everything that I think about antinatalists. But the reason I am talking about that is, like Michelle points out in her video too, you know, there's been a lot of kind of like, you know, antinatalist kind of positions being thrown about in conjunction with this. And she talks about this debate on Logan Blake's channel, which I actually haven't even watched the whole thing yet. But I mean, I'm kind of just shocked at this point in some of the things that are said by, you know, the person here who is supposedly a vegan, Zohar, in this debate with Magnus, who is not a vegan. And they're talking about antinatalism, and you know, at one point, I don't know where it starts, probably like about an hour and a half in, you know, Magnus gets Zohar kind of in a weird situation where Zohar basically says that Magnus raising a chicken in a perfectly ideal, you know, chicken environment, free range, lovingly cared for, etc., not genetically modified, not pumped full of hormones, just totally like natural, like foraging around, picking through the grass, all this kind of stuff. And then, you know, he's petting it one day, and just all of a sudden, just out of nowhere, the bird doesn't see it coming, instantaneous death, you know, snaps its neck, and then he, you know, feeds 6 people off of the body of the chicken. And Zohar, who is supposed to be a vegan, says that he has no problem with this, and in fact he even says that he's doing the chicken a favor because he's saving it from potential worse, like, suffering and worse experiencing worse suffering later on, you know, like say in a factory farm or a, you know, slaughterhouse or what have you. And I'm just like, oh my god, like, this person is not a vegan, first of all. Like, you cannot be a vegan like that. And Magnus calls him on it, and he says, yeah, you know, you might be plant-based, you know, whatever. You might even, you know, not buy other things that are related to, you know, animal products or whatever, but you are not a vegan. If that is what you believe, that that's okay, and in fact, not even just okay, but that is actually, you know, you're doing the chicken a favor by killing it. I mean, I have, like, very, very severe, you know, issues with that, and that is very dangerous thinking. I mean, if you apply that in any kind of, like, human context, I mean, that is like, that's psychopath level. Like, that is really, really scary. And I mean, you could use that to argue any number of really horrific things. It's like, oh, you have poverty in a country, just kill them really humanely, and then they won't suffer anymore, you know. And it's like no, like, veganism is not about reducing suffering. Veganism is about not exploiting people, and veganism is about seeing sentient beings as individuals, and veganism is about seeing moral worth of a life, of a sentient being, and seeing, you know, that person or that animal, like non-human animal, has a moral worth and has an interest in living its life. That's what veganism is about. Now, you know, you can, I have this kind of weird thing, like, with antinatalists, because so far in every single interaction I've had with any antinatalist, I just get to this point of frustration with them, because it seems like none of them really have any kind of good arguments to refute what I have criticized Benatar's logic or asymmetry or whatever in my video, the response to Inmendum. I don't feel like any of them have explained that to any kind of degree of sufficiency for me to even acknowledge that that has any kind of merit whatsoever. So that's like one thing. It frustrates me. The other thing is that they will continuously move the goalpost, and they will just not even listen to you, and just anything you say, it's just like they will just, I don't know, somehow ignore it to the point of like thinking, I don't know what they think, but it almost comes off as if like you're lying somehow. Like they have these, claims about you can't have happiness without the, without that happiness coming at the expense of someone else. You can't do anything nice for somebody else without it being from greed, because you get joy from doing something nice for somebody else. And it's like, okay, first of all, I don't agree with either of these statements, but even if the second one were true, if we only do nice things, if we only do charitable acts because we get some kind of joy from that, like, is that so bad? Like, is that so wrong? Like who cares? If everybody just did constantly like nice stuff for everyone around and all sentient beings as far as they could, like, would that be a bad thing? Like, I don't think so. But I mean, I just think like every debate I've seen so far with antinatalism, like, any of them that actually go long enough to not have the person rage quit, like that's like another thing. But any of the ones that I've seen, including the ones with Magnus in this one, like people just end up saying ridiculous things and like ignoring the fact that there is not just suffering in life, that there is extreme joy in life, and that it just seems like in every case that I've seen so far, the antinatalists do not understand the ethics of veganism. They do not understand the moral consideration that should be given to a life, and I'll take this one step further, the people who are elfists. So elfism is an extension, or I guess like a kind of subcategory or whatever of antinatalism. It's they basically think that it would actually be preferable to end all life, and that I think is like really dangerous, really psychopathic kind of level thinking, and I just think it's very dangerous. I actually do worry about these people, and I think if anybody wants to see my views on this, I mean, like I say, watch those other videos. That's not really what I want to talk about, but I kind of want to just bring it back to this idea of the wild animal suffering, and how does this relate to these ideas. Now, I think that much like Michelle says in her video, we cannot be going into the wild and trying to somehow erase suffering. I don't think it's actually smart, because we have no idea. Like, people think we are so smart that we can actually ephilism, Ara says. I've been saying elfism. Anyway, elfism is funnier. It's cuter, but I guess, yeah, ephilism. I don't know. It's like life backwards, but I don't know. There you go. Ephilism. Thank you. So, what I wanted to say about this is that, we can't just assume that we can eradicate suffering and fix everything. I mean, you have to think, like, how many, I don't know how many species there are, like, of animals. You have to look at, like, how many of those, cause suffering and pain to some other type of animal. And, like, in my view, the question isn't like, do you care about animal suffering? Yes, we all care about animal suffering. We wish, like, you could somehow not have any suffering in the world. Like, yeah, sure, that'd be nice. But again, it's like almost like counter to what that essay was saying. It's like the world isn't just. The people who kind of want to make it just are these people who are wanting to address or do something about wild animal suffering beyond, again, I'm talking about not the exceptional cases, the flood, the fire, etc. When we're just talking about, getting the lion to stop eating the zebra, or getting a bird to stop eating a bug or a worm, or an ant to stop eating another insect, or, whatever. A ladybug to stop eating an aphid. When we're talking about that kind of thing, like, you have to multiply that across all of the animals that are in the world, and it's just an impossible task to think that you can somehow fix all that. And you can wish that it was a nice you know, one of these animated movies. There was a great movie. It's called Zootopia. I really like that movie. It was really cool. But it's at some point in the in this in this utopia where all the animals have become herbivores and they all get along. It's very interesting, and that would be nice. But that's a cartoon. That's not real life. And you can people who are proponents of actually doing something. You can obviously address this and fault me for saying this. You can say, well, just because we don't know how to do it doesn't mean that we shouldn't try, or doesn't mean we shouldn't think about it. And that's true. That's not my argument for not doing it, that it's impossible. But my argument for not doing it is that people are too arrogant and too ignorant, quite honestly, to even be able to potentially come close to like figuring all this out. I'm just going to give a couple of examples really quick. You have crazy flooding going on right now in the UK. You have fires in Australia. You have flooding in the UK. You have all these natural disasters happening. Much of which can probably be attributed to human caused climate change, but that's again a topic for another video. But just very quickly here, Storm Dennis, no let up as the flood continues. I think they were saying in one day they got something close to 1 month's worth of rainfall. It's insane. There's just so many communities completely overrun with water, all this kind of stuff. I'm just giving this as the backdrop. I read this fascinating article. This came out a couple weeks ago here in February, middle of February. Beavers cut flooding and pollution and boost wildlife populations. So for 5 years now, they have been studying a small number of beavers that are in the Devon area in the UK. And what happened is that beavers used to be native to the UK, but people had actually hunted them to extinction. It says, more than 400 years ago. And basically, they had not been in the wild since then. And then what happened is, here it is, the beavers which escaped from a captive population were discovered in 2013 living wild on the river. When plans to exterminate the animals were greeted by popular outcry, thank God, the government agreed to a scientific trial with the funds entirely raised by the Devon Wildlife Trust and its supporters. So kudos to them. They basically stopped the government from killing these beavers. And then since then, it says they've risen from 2 breeding pairs in 2015 to at least 8 pairs today, as the herbivorous rodent has expanded along tributaries, including the River Tail. Now, if you read through the article, they talk a lot about how, I guess, people didn't even want the beavers because it's claimed that, they cause flooding and they build these dams, and, some farmers' fields are going to be flooded because the dams they build actually block up the water and what have you. But what they found was they actually been studying these little critters for the past 5 years. They have found that they had huge benefits. They reduced flooding. They improved the cleanliness of water. They had more fish in the water. So here, they had a significant role in filtering pollutants, including manure, slurry, and fertilizers from the river. New wetlands created by the beavers have benefited water voles, riverine birds such as dippers, and wildlife, including teal. There are 37% more fish in the pools created by beaver dams than in comparable stretches of the river. Trout have been recorded leaping over beaver dams during high river flows. And basically, they said that there was just a tiny adverse effect because, here it is. In one case, a small organic potato field was flooded. So they're basically saying, this Devon Wildlife Trust and, the local supporters are saying that, look, man, this is hugely beneficial. Any minor impact that happens, we should be able to deal with this, or maybe compensate the farmers, whatever, help them out in some other way. But basically, they're saying, following 5 years of detailed research work, the report concludes that the positive impacts of beavers outweighed the negatives. However, it also makes clear that those who benefit from beaver reintroduction may not always be the same people as those who bear the cost, highlighting that the reduction of flood risk in communities downstream may come at a cost of water being stored on farmland upstream. So it's some farmers lose a tiny little bit of land, they get a little bit of flooding, but people downstream are protected from floods. So it's a huge benefit to human safety. It improves the water quality. It improves the wildlife for other animals like birds and fish and et cetera, et cetera. And the only reason I'm bringing this up is because the government still hasn't made up its mind. They may still actually kill the beavers, and they are asking for an extension. Here it is. The Department for Environment, Food, and Rural Affairs has announced an extension of the Devon trial until September, when it will decide if the Devon beavers can remain. So it's like, I bring this up to just make a simple point. People are so incredibly vested in their, kind of like own self-interest, the interest of the farmers, the financial interest, like who knows what kind of like economic, plays are, happening here in the, behind the scenes. And it has been going on for 5 years. It's been demonstrated with proper, research and documentation that these herbivorous animals are actually helping the entire, like, everything, basically. And even so, the government is like, I don't know, man, we might still need to kill those things or get rid of them or whatever. And what I mean by this is that, like, we're talking about an animal that has actually reduced suffering, has, like, improved even safety to humans and all this kind of stuff, and people are still so stupid that they are thinking about actually getting rid of them. Now, you think that people are this stupid, and then you're going to somehow think that they are going to find some solution that will, bioengineer or, change the DNA or, like, I don't know, come up with some tech solution. Like, one of the things that Conundrum was suggesting to me in the comments was some guy's work who, is looking at all these kinds of things, like, basically, everything from, like, biotech, nanotech, all these kinds of things to try and, like, basically get, animals to basically, I don't know, like, not cause suffering to other animals and stop, eating each other or whatever. And I just think, like, it's beyond ridiculous. Like, it is so far from practical that it's like, I'm not saying we shouldn't talk about it. We can talk about it, but it's beyond just a thought experiment. Like, I see 0% chance of people being smart enough to actually figure out some way that all living creatures could somehow be taken into consideration and, not negatively impact things. Like, you can say, well, why don't we just kill all the predator animals because they're the ones causing the suffering? Well, okay, ants are predator animals. Like, the world supposedly wouldn't be able to exist. All life on Earth would die if we didn't have ants. That's what people often say or claim. Now, I'm sure it's not just ants. It's probably other animals like that. But bees too, pollinators, etc. I mean, like, they do stuff that causes suffering. They do things. Even animals that are herbivorous are doing, suffering. They kill each other. Like I recently saw a video where, like, a zebra was trying to kill an infant zebra because it wasn't its bloodline, and it wanted, to be able to impregnate the, the mother or whatever I think that's called the foal, so she could give birth to its own progeny, and then, that way he could have, like, more control over the herd. And he's trying to drown the little zebra in the water. Now, again, it's like, how do you account for that? That has nothing to do with it's a lion tracking down the zebra. That's a zebra like trying to kill another zebra. So again, to think that you can somehow, bioengineer or, do anything like this, I just think it's really kind of, like, arrogant and crazy to think that people could be smart enough to do that. I just don't think that they could. And then the other thing is that they don't think about all the all the impact of, like, what kind of suffering do you introduce into the wild animals by getting rid of predators. So if you get rid of predators, what happens is you get too many deer, too many other things, and then they graze all the stuff, and then there's not enough food, and now they're starving to death, and, like, all these kinds of things. It's like, people just do not, like, have the capacity to understand that complex a system as the world is and all the living creatures on it to be able to suggest any kind of way to fix that. That's my view on it. So hopefully that answers, my thoughts on it. And then, what do I think should be done about it? Well, I think we should try and reduce wild animal suffering, because in my view, the greatest cause of wild animal suffering is people, is humans. We are the worst perpetuators, I think, of animal suffering. And I'm not talking just about wild animal suffering. I'm talking about all animal suffering. And in my video that I linked here for you guys, where was it? In my response to Inmendum, there was a chart that I showed. I'm going to try to find it here. Yep, here it is somewhere. There it is. This is it going to play? There it is. This is a slide that I got from a presentation by a wonderful man. I can't remember his name. He gave it at the UN, I believe, when they aired the film Cowspiracy. And it's a chart of the megafauna. I don't remember what qualifies as megafauna. I think it's animals bigger than 10 kilograms, maybe. I think that was what is accounted for in this picture. And basically, you can see that from about 100,000 to 10,000 years ago, this turquoise-colored sphere, or whatever this is, oval, represented all the wild animals that were, again, I say the megafauna. I think it's 10 kilograms. It might be 25. I can't remember. But humans make up that tiny little dot there within that turquoise sphere. And what you have today is the wild animals have been reduced to this much smaller sphere. Humans have become twice what the original wild animals sphere was, and the rest is basically livestock animals. So we are actually causing this amount of animal suffering, and this is the wild animals. Now, again, I know that article I referenced, and I know what the these antinatalists, elfists, whatever the heck, people wanting to do about wild animal suffering, they're going to say, okay, but this isn't the numbers of the animals, because those tiny insects and tiny bugs and birds and whatever that don't fall into this, that is still far more numbers. But again, this just gives you an indication of the size of the human impact. And I'm just saying that all the antinatalists that I have seen so far in debates and in discussions, in comments and stuff, they pretty much kind of wash over this stuff. And in fact, I've come across several antinatalists who aren't even vegan, and that to me is just laughable. Like, if you claim to be an antinatalist and you're not a vegan, it's like, there's the door, get out. Like, you're immediately like cut off. I don't want to hear anything you have to say. Like, do you have to be an antinatalist to be a vegan? No, absolutely not. But do you have to be a vegan to be an antinatalist? Absolutely yes. That's my opinion anyway. If you care about suffering and reducing suffering, like, and you're not a vegan, like, hypocrite city. Like, that's what that is. And I just think, like, you cannot ignore this picture and these figures. And that's kind of where I wanted to end there. As far as, again, going back to what can we do, like, if you look at this article, this is just talking about going back to something that people have been they, like, again, just kind of, it's funny, like, how many things people don't know. And a lot of times I think even people in the past knew more than we know now. It's almost like we've gotten stupider as people. Like, they're going back to an old planting technique where you plant wildflowers near the crop that you want to grow. Because what happens is you end up getting beneficial insects and wildlife that is drawn into those fields, and you get better pest control, quote unquote, without having to spray harsh chemicals and poisons and all these kinds of things, because it attracts naturally the other kinds of animals and insects that take care of the insects that would be eating your crops. Now, this is just one example. I actually would go farther than this. I recommend permaculture practices where you don't see these kinds of things. I don't like monoculture. I think we need to move away from it. But this is just one small example of something that people can do. My big thing is that people need to go back to small-scale agriculture. I'm going to just jump back here to webcam view. And I think we need to switch back to localized, like, communities. I think we need to get rid of animal agriculture. That's like a huge thing. if the world goes vegan and we move to a more permaculture, veganic farming system, we can greatly reduce all kinds of animal suffering, not just wild animal suffering. I mean, right now, animal agriculture is the leading cause of species extinction we have in the world. Like, we are causing the wild animal suffering. In my view, a animal living in nature, unencumbered and unrestricted by man, facing its own life and its own destiny, and yes, its own suffering, and sometimes at the hand of other animals, like that, I don't think is something that we should be involved in. That would presume that we know better what is good for that animal than the animal itself. I don't think that's right. I don't think that's giving the animals enough credit. I think it's coming from a place of arrogance and just people thinking that they know better. And when I hear people like Zohar say that it's doing the chicken a favor by wringing its neck so that it doesn't experience suffering, I think that is incredibly illogical. I think it's incredibly arrogant. And I wouldn't want somebody to decide that for me. If I were the chicken, I wouldn't want somebody saying like, oh, I'm going to spare you some potential suffering later by killing you now. That doesn't work in a human context. I don't think it should be allowed as a justification in a non-human animal context. And that's really the crux of what I have to say. So I don't know. I mean, that's kind of that's the stream. I'm going to try and scroll back through because I see you guys have been typing away furiously, and I haven't really been able to follow it. So I'm going to scroll back, and I'm happy to take questions, I guess, if people have it. Hopefully this was interesting to you guys. I don't know. Wow, there's so many comments. Holy cow. I just keep scrolling and I haven't even got to the type yet. Okay. Yeah, Luis agrees that it's not karma. 99.999% of the time, stuff just happens and karma, doesn't have anything to do with it. Jen, was this what came up in Humane Hancock's discussion? Yeah, we covered that. Casomorphin's not happiness. Yeah, Nikki, I'm sure that was the regards to the dairy being addicted to it. Egg industry causes incalculable suffering also. Exactly, Luis, because those are just, killed by day one or, a couple hours after birth, so we don't even know what those figures are a lot of times. Hi, Aura, welcome. Jen, anyone here not subscribed to Michelle, though? I'll follow you around saying shame until you are. Yes, please do sign up for Michelle. She's awesome. Okay, what else is going on? Most people don't care about animals or people that are geographically or culturally removed. I would agree with that, Jen. But I think people do care. If they're given a chance to kind of see it and interact with it, I think they really do care. And even, you just look at Australia, all over the world, people were donating money and trying to get food there. They were dumping food from helicopters and all this kind of stuff. People do care. I think it's just crass, and I don't know. I think it's really wrong to say that people don't care. Aura says, I'm not an antinatalist, but I don't get why people need to have tons of kids. Just have one or two or adopt. I would agree with that. I don't know why people have huge amounts of kids. And I don't have any issue with people not wanting to have kids. I talk a lot about that in that stream, in that live Q&A, so check that out if you want to see that. Okay, Aura says, I'm an only child and my childhood was great. I didn't need siblings. Yeah, I think it's fine for people to not have kids too. If you don't want to have kids, that's totally fine. I know a lot of people who don't have kids, and they have great lives. They're happy. They're traveling, doing all sorts of cool stuff. I don't know. I don't think there's any obligation for people to have kids at all. Okay, not sure what you're saying is it about Mary? I don't know. Nikki, one was enough for me, but now I have 3 lovely grandchildren. Awesome. Congratulations. Nikki, Jen, shame I was going to offer you a couple of my siblings. Daniel says all the arguments fall apart. I think that was when you were talking about the antinatalists. Okay, yep, there have been some bad rage quits. the antinatalist debate between Avi and Superhuman Dance. That was, I couldn't even stand to watch that. I don't know anybody who could just, like, I just don't understand why people get joy out of watching these videos by people like Superhuman Dance and Inmendum. Like, I don't find them entertaining or interesting or logical. Okay, Louis says, have you ever covered the issue of abortion on your channel? I haven't. It's not a vegan issue per se, but somewhat tangentially related. I might make a video about that. I think there was a really good video by Bite Size Vegan. Emily does everything. She's covered everything. I'm going to rewatch that and see if there's anything that I would say differently. But if I remember, I think she did a good job on that video, so check that one out. Let's see. Daniel, like elfism. That sounds fun. Yeah, oh, you like it. You like elfism. Mm-hmm. I'm glad. Jen, hey, I'd push the button, fight me. You'd push the button to kill everything? I hope you're joking. It does sound fun. Okay, good. You guys like my elfism thing. I have to change the tags in my video because I put that in there and I put elfism. The blue button increases suffering. Oh, Seltkirk. I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name right. The blue button increases suffering? I don't know. Okay, and do you push that or what? That's where you get plastic surgery on your ears and live in the woods. Elfism, nice. Man, I wish I was keeping up with the comments earlier. I would have been laughing much more. CO pronounced my name right, but Logan can't seem to get it. Okay. I don't know. Sorry. I'm glad I pronounced it right. Daniel, abortion is just a deflection. Well, I think, Daniel, to be fair, yeah, I think a lot of times when I've seen people talking to vegans and they bring up abortion, it's not coming from a place of genuine, kind of concern or interest. It's more as a gotcha if the vegan happens to be a pro-choice person or pro-abortion person, and then they try to use that as some kind of thing that's like you're a hypocrite. So I don't think it's coming from a good place usually. Okay, hey Leon, welcome. What else have we got? Daniel says ahimsa isn't veganism. I will be honest, I don't know too much about ahimsa. I wouldn't be able to say anything about that. Leon, welcome. Okay, Thaddeus, hey man. Mod Vegan was suggesting that we end wild animal suffering. On the other hand, Abba Lasil holds wildlife as the ideal vegan goal of wildlife management. Well, look, I mean, what do we do? Quite frankly, the reason why I did this stream and talked about antinatalism and elfism or elfism is because if you actually take what these people think, what antinatalists think with this Benatar asymmetry, and all the suffering is the only thing that matters, and it outweighs the good, and the good can only come at the expense of somebody else, and blah blah blah, all these kind of negative ways of thinking of this. I really think, like, if you think that, the only logical conclusion is to get rid of all life because it is better. I wholeheartedly disagree with that, but I think that is the logical conclusion, and I think it's stupid because, like, I don't agree with all the steps that lead up to becoming an antinatalist or especially not an elfist or elfist. And yeah, I mean, like, I don't have any problem with somebody being an antinatalist for themselves or even trying to convince other people. But when they try to impose that on animals, which have no way of giving their consent to it, I think that's incredibly immoral, and you're disrespecting the the moral consideration, the moral worth, the moral value of that sentient being's life. And I think that's just incredibly wrong. I think it's arrogant, and I think it's immoral. So that's where I draw the line. Zootopia has a good message, R says. Yep, I would agree with that. It's a great cartoon. Check it out, anybody who hasn't seen it yet. Seltkirk says, except in Bug's Life, they're definitely moral agents in that. I haven't seen Bug's Life, so I can't comment. Nikki agrees. Daniel, yeah, I'd call it scientism. I don't know what that was referring to. Terry, hey Terry, dolphin washed up on our beach after Storm Dennis. Hopefully they helped it. Marshall Lee, hey man, welcome. All the wildlife management in the UK is in the favor of hunting cults. Yeah, that's another huge problem, is that a lot of these wildlife management and conservation groups and stuff, they're really kind of like they're controlled very heavily by and funded heavily by hunting groups and trophy hunters and stuff. I'm going to do a separate stream about that. I came across an insane article recently, but I'll do that as a separate stream. So check back, Lee, on that. And everybody go check out Marshall Lee's page. If anybody thinks you can't be a vegan athlete and you can't kick ass, go check out Lee. Subscribe to his channel. Okay, my God, the cut is more hunt. Man, don't get me started on the hunts. I did a stream about that too. Fox hunters, etc. Those people are nuts. Leon, beavers are herbivores. Nice. Yeah, I didn't know that, Leon. I only researched that when I was getting ready for this stream. Beavers are herbivores. They eat mostly just like tree bark and parts of the tree and the twigs and all these kinds of things. They have special, I guess, like digestive systems that have adapted to being able to actually break down the the woody material. I think it has to do with bacteria that's in their stomach, if I remember right. Yeah. Okay, let's see. Where did I lose my train of thought here? Okay, here we go. Daniel, I'm not going to read your phrase out loud. They're about hunters, but I would agree. Marshall Lee, only fox hunting was banned. They still shoot plenty of birds all the time, and they mess up the moorland for it. Yeah, and they still kill all the foxes too. It's just illegal, but the police turn a blind eye to it, and they don't do anything. Hounds coming around and defecating everywhere. Yep, and getting hit by trains. I did a live stream where I covered a crazy story where the Santa Claus train hit some hunting dogs that got on the track, and all the kids were terrified, and they got off the train crying and stuff. They had to put down the dog and stuff, and it's insane. Luis, oh, the utter irony of humans condemning beavers for being responsible for environmental problems. Yeah, exactly. Nikki, I think they will rewild and start hunting again. Most people will be kept out of the countryside and smart cities. Terry, I remember when they built a road right through the middle of the new forest. Government sucks. All governments are unfit for purpose. I would agree. Yeah, they're all out for, the ruling elite and their own selfish purposes. It's a red herring. Even talking about it as a distraction. I think you guys were talking about the abortion there, maybe. Anyway. Selkirk, slicing up Native American land for unhealthy pipelines. Yep, hugely damaging. Humans cause suffering, so we can kill humans. Exactly. It's like, where do you draw the line? But I guess the elfists want to just kill everything and everybody. So, the circle of life, exactly. In America, I think they will go for holistic farming. Yeah, ethically sourced human meat is okay. Well, if you watch the debate with Zohar and Magnus, he's okay with aliens coming down and farming humans, even breeding them into existence because they get more joy than we get suffering. It's like this balance or something that they just weigh everything up, and it's just insane. Terry, camels are rapists. I don't understand what that... Oh, you mean in the wild? Oh, okay, I didn't know that. Maybe they are, I don't know. Ducks do so much rape that female ducks have evolved fake tubes to divert unwanted semen. Wow, that's insane. I didn't know that. So yeah, there's all sorts of unethical stuff happening even with herbivorous animals. It has nothing to do with deal with the lions and the wolves and stuff. Yeah, Jen, they send George Monbiot to kill the deer. That is a crazy article that he wrote justifying that. I'm going to probably do a separate stream about that. That guy's nuts. Louise, if humans weren't meant to be eaten, then why are they made out of meat? Yeah, exactly. The typical meat eater response. Herbivore, hey Graham, welcome. Monbiot manages to get it so utterly wrong by killing and eating a deer. Absolutely, the guy's a flake. Selkirk, aliens are smarter than humans, therefore alien cost is ethical. Exactly, that's what Zohar agreed to. Nikki, yes, to warm up desensitization. Sky's the limit, welcome. Hey pal, good job, thank you. Or good topic, sorry. Okay, well I hope you liked it. Oh, it jumped again. Where did I lose it? Oh man, there's so many comments. You guys are really going fast here. I need to learn how to speed read better or something. Okay, cool. Okay, a vegan antinatalist must be an elfist, and as such, they're not actually a vegan. I'm not sure why you think so, Terry. I think not every antinatalist needs to be an elfist. That's not what I was trying to say. Hopefully, you didn't confuse what I said. But I think if you're an antinatalist and you're not a vegan, then you're a hypocrite for sure. And same thing if you're an elfist. But if you're an elfist, I think, yeah, you're not a vegan. Maybe that's what you're trying to say here, because you're actually proposing to end life of somebody that you cannot get consent from. And I talked about that in my video too, that I did the response to in Mendham. So check that out if you want more on that. Okay, Sky's the Limit says, I would go so far to say antinatalists can't be vegan. If you feel anything for humans like you feel for animals, they can only be plant-based. Their ethics are for killing, not love. Well, see, that's where I would say some antinatalists who aren't elfists and who are just trying to convince people to not procreate, I would say there's nothing immoral about that. I think their reasons for why they advocate for that is really illogical, because they're putting value on the potential suffering of someone who doesn't yet exist. That's in my mind, that's a total zero. It's totally neutral. There is neither good nor bad in somebody who doesn't exist yet. And I think by worrying about the harm that you can do to somebody who as of yet doesn't exist, that's just a fool's game. There's actually nothing that you're really worried about. But I wouldn't say it's immoral to not have kids, and I wouldn't say it's immoral to convince other people to not have kids either. Even to the point that if you could somehow convince all humans to never want to procreate again, and we would all just die out from just a slow, death, like from age, like I don't think that's immoral if you could actually convince people to do that. But forcing them to do that, I think, is incredibly immoral, because you're taking away the choice of somebody else to live kind of, a natural life, and procreating is part of natural life. So I think that's where I draw the line. Aura, do most people hold deontological views, or is it split among consequentialism and deontology? I think that's an interesting question. I think I'm kind of of the mindset that neither, because you have that expression, right, of like the road to hell is paved with good intentions. I don't think the road to hell is paved with good intentions. I think the road to hell is paved with really bad intentions, and then occasionally you have one or two bricks here and there that are good intention, based, and they just kind of ended up, turning out bad. I think for the most part, like, I believe in the golden rule, and I think if you follow the golden rule, the vast majority of the time, I think that the consequence of that is actually good. But that's my view of it. I don't know what other people think about it. B12, Blaze It Vegan, welcome. Debate me, bro. I don't know if was going to somebody else or for me, but anyway. Graham, herbivore, same as planting roses in vineyards. Cool. Does that help reduce pests? I don't know. Probably that's what you were writing for. Okay. Terry, some suffering is acceptable. I would agree with that too. Certain forms of suffering, that is, yeah. Some suffering is actually good for you. I mean, I think, like, if you're doing training, like I did a video about running, in the beginning, like, and actually not even in the beginning, just when you go running, there is some suffering, but you actually get really good joy out of it too. So it's like, I don't know, like I don't know. It's just an interesting thing. I don't see any compassion in antinatalists. That seems so out of place to me. Of course, everyone is free to believe what they want, though. Yeah, I don't see compassion in antinatalists either. And I have yet to find one who actually seems like they understand properly what vegan ethics is about. And Selkirk says it's a dumb position, the chicken dilemma from Zohar. I would absolutely agree. That is very, very strongly not vegan. Terry, if I didn't have kids, I'd read a book. I like reading, and I have kids, but I did probably read more when I was going into the city to work, because I read on the public transport a lot. Louise, I miss Bite Size Vegan. Yeah, she's awesome. She's my hero. I watched so many Bite Size Vegan videos when I first went vegan. She was like my absolute role model. I love her channel. I just think she's awesome. Sky's the limit. I agree. I don't think the natalist position is that you have to have kids. It's just that not collectively everyone should stop. It should be determined on your own individual situation. I would agree with that. Leon, yeah, she was awesome. I hope she'll get back to posting some more vids in the future. Whatever happened to Vice says vegan? Well, she kind of burned out, I think, to some extent. And then she also went off to do other kinds of activism. So I believe she is still active as a vegan activist. She's just not making videos. And quite honestly, like, I don't blame her. I mean, I think literally any topic that I can think of that has to do with veganism, she's already done an amazing video about it. So it's like at some point she's just like, okay, well, I'm done. Like, I did everything. And I love her channel because it's not about stupid response videos to like stupid people and you're saying the same stupid thing like 10,000 times over. It's like she's just done everything. She's so classy from start to finish. I love her channel. Can't say enough good things about her. Leon says she got overwhelmed by her YouTube schedule and quit to focus on doing speeches and the like. Yep, that's what I understand too. Sky's the limit. All life is important. Being pro-life and vegan is consistent. Being pro-choice and vegan is not. Yeah, I'll cover what my thoughts on the abortion question is. I'll do a video about it probably. I'll check out what Emily says about it. I don't remember exactly all the stuff she covered, but I think she had a lot of really good things to say about it. Yep, Louise seconded it. Daniel, word. Okay, I'm not joking. I can list reasons why. In real life, I'm vegan and not antinatalist, but I side with Thanos if it's total and nobody suffers. Hypothetical. Oh, that was for pushing the button. I'm very surprised to hear that. Anyway, maybe we can have a debate someday, Jen. With somebody as nice as you, I'm sure that we could actually have a reasonable discussion about that. Leon, I'm pro-choice up to the point of sentience, something I think most of us are. Okay, Terry says she got an autism diagnosis and decided to take a break. I really enjoyed that video where she talks about it. Yeah, she did talk about autism, that's right. Oh, jumped again. Oh, where did you guys go? Every time I get to where I thought I caught up, like it just jumps again. Okay, here we go. Sky's the limit, to each their own, but I think life starts at conception. Daniel, scientism is the fact that we think we can fix all these problems. Oh, okay, yeah. Daniel, I would absolutely agree with that. I think people are just insane. Like we are so arrogant. We are so, full of ourselves, and we think that we can just figure everything out and like tech solution for everything. And man, I'm going to give an example from one of my all-time favorite books ever. Is by Masanobu Fukuoka, The One Straw Revolution. Everybody, please, please, please go read that book. I love that book. It got me into gardening. It made me a gardener. I love that book. I read it when I was just turning vegan and kind of thinking out all these like ethical things when I was like watching all this stuff and like reading about it. And it just coincided with that kind of by chance. And man, there's this great story in there where he says, you have what he gives is a good analogy of the way people are and humans are with farming. He says, there's a scientist and he's working in his lab like day and night. He barely rests, barely sleeps, barely eats. He's working on his invention. And, after months and months of doing this research and working on this invention, he finally invents his invention, but he's actually, his eyesight is actually deteriorated because he's been working so hard and not taking care of himself. And what has he invented? His invention is glasses. And it's like, that really, really is a powerful story. And it's like, that is what people do in agriculture. We try to fix problems that we create. We try to make things better, and in doing so, we actually make them worse. And then we try to engineer solutions to fix the thing that we ourselves did. It's an awesome book. Go check it out. But yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. Okay. Terry, I'm pretty sure she would have sought the diagnosis. Well, yeah, I'm pretty sure. Okay, she probably just needs a diet tune-up. I don't know. I wouldn't even fathom a guess as to what she's eating or not eating. I don't know. There were weird videos where she was eating like a bunch of heads of lettuce and dates and I don't know, a few other things, but like whatever, I'm not going to talk about her diet. Luis, I haven't seen a reasonable criticism of the pro-choice position. Okay, I'll bear that in mind. Terry, he's more of an environmentalist. Don't know who you guys were talking about. Was that Thanos? I don't know. I don't even know who that is, honestly. Pro-choice is against God's will. It's not the man or the woman's choice to kill a child. Murder is wrong. That is a reasonable argument against it if you don't believe in murder. Pro-choice is not the same as pro-abortion. What about fetuses, though? Well, yeah, that's what I think a lot of times when people argue against vegans, when they bring up abortion, that's they're using it as an excuse to go and continue exploiting animals. Terry, if you're an antinatalist and you care about animal suffering, you should be an elfist. I would agree, Terry, to the point that, yeah, if you accept that ideology, that is the logical conclusion. I would agree with that. Yeah, sky's the limit. How is that not pro-abortion? Okay, why don't you go subjugate women somewhere else? It's not about the baby, it's not about the woman. Yeah, let's not make this stream about that. I'll do a video about it, I guess. I'll see. I'm not gonna read through everything. Let's see. Leon says abortions are not. Oh shoot! I lost it again. Not forced on women, not unless the woman is unconscious, and the only way for the mother to survive would be an abortion. But even there, they would have to respect the will of the mother. I love that Bite Size did the veganism through history. Yeah, that was an awesome video. I loved that series. They were so like amazing. I loved seeing all the people going back, like, you know, whatever. There was the guy in like ancient Arabia, like I forget what the guy's name is. Oh shoot, Al-Amari, I think maybe, or something like that. The guy was like, you know, vegan, like badass, like whatever it was. I don't even know, like 1,000 something or other, like I don't know, like years ago. It was like insane. I love that series. It was cool. Oh, Al-Mari, that's it. Yeah, Daniel's got it. Yep. Okay. Do you support the choices? Okay, I'm gonna skip the abortion stuff. Marshall Lee, Veganism Through History was one of my favorite series too. Yeah, that was great. Al-Mari is now one of my favorite vegans of the past. Yeah, total badass. Really cool. Jen, sure, we can discuss sometime. Cool, we'll do a debate then, or we can just do a discussion. I don't even want to call it a debate. With nice people, I don't I don't call them debates. I just call them discussions. Leon, Veganism Through History is my favorite too. Nice, cool. I've been watching a lot of John Coulter. Is that the guy who does all the organic gardening stuff? Is that his name? I can't remember. Nikki, I think that is not appropriate to have an opinion on abortion. Both sides are considered by the person in that situation. To do more abortion stuff. Mambio, yeah, we talked about him. It's baby. Okay, guys, I'll no worries for hijacking. No worries. I'll at the very least rewatch what Emily says in that video, because I think she actually gave a very, very good kind of like considered summary of the sides, both sides of the argument, and I remember thinking that it was a very good video. So I'll watch that. If anybody hasn't watched it, I would say watch that, and then if I feel like maybe I have some kind of different views or can add to it in some meaningful way, then I'll probably do a separate video. If not, then just take it to be that I agree with what I remember is a pretty good approach from her video. But anyway, so cool, guys. I hope this was interesting to everybody. I know the end was just kind of the comments and stuff, but and it went off onto a different topic, really. But if you guys have questions about this, you know, feel free to put them in the comments after, if anybody's watching the replay or whatever. If you feel like I didn't address the things that you wanted me to address, conundrum, then let me know. I'm happy to discuss it with you as well. You seem like a very nice, friendly person from the comments. I think we would hopefully be able to have a reasonable discussion and not a rage quit debate. But let me know, and or anybody else, I guess, if you want to talk about this. You know, if you've been watching my channel for a while, you probably know like antinatalism is not my shtick. I don't even really like talking about it too much, but sometimes, you know, I do get asked about it, and I've done those other videos about it, and, you know, talked about antinatalism on Logan's channel. One time I remember we were debate. I think it was the Millennial Prepster debate. I think Sebi came on. Sebi the antinatalist came on, and we had a bunch of antinatalism stuff there, and that was like a really funny kind of like discussion for me, because he seemed like such a nice person, but it was like like one of his like gotcha questions for me was like, oh, but you know, like a deer, you know, suffers because a wolf is gonna, you know, bite it in the neck and eat it and rip it apart, and it's just as bad as factory farming. And I was just like, well, you know, I don't think it's as bad. Like if I had a choice, I would definitely be the deer versus like a pig in a factory farm. Like with the pig in the factory farm, it has 0% chance of like coming out of that alive. With the deer, like you at least have a chance. You can kick the wolf. You can try to run away. You know the wolf doesn't always get the deer, and it certainly doesn't get every single deer. So it's like maybe as the deer you could live a splendid, wonderful life and never, you know, get attacked by a wolf at all, or be able to always run away or whatever. So it's like when I said that, it was like you could just see he just like I don't think he had even considered that before. And I just think that's kind of like a weird thing that like somebody would have this position and never think that like, oh, like yeah, wild animals still have it way better than a factory farmed animal. Like even if it is killed by a wolf, like I would still maintain that I would still rather be the deer getting killed by the wolf. I know it's like choosing the lesser of two evils. Like obviously if you can choose to not get killed at all, like you would pick that. It is the lesser of two evils. I would definitely agree. But again, at least there you've had a chance to live your natural life in the environment that you're, you know, kind of most adapted for, or you know, suited to, or whatever you want to call the term. And you know, you have a chance to like have interactions with your peers, your social group, your family, you know, deer and other animals that you might encounter. You know, you would still have a better life, you know, than one being in a factory farm. So again, that's neither here nor there. But okay, cool. Anybody else? Louise, I love you too. Love everybody. Thank you. Jen made it to the end. Good night. Cool. All humans are persons and everyone should go vegan. Absolutely. Thank you. I'm glad that you liked it. Sky's the limit. And thank you all for being on. You're welcome, Leon. Thanks for being here. Nikki, you too, Louise, everyone, have a good night. Yep. Angry Vegan, ahoy. Hey, welcome. Just kind of finishing up here. So, Talex says, antinatalism is the pinnacle of veganism. I would absolutely disagree with you. Watch my other videos. I don't know if you were being sarcastic there or serious, but anyway. So yeah, that's it, guys. I hope everybody liked it. If you did, give it a thumbs up, please. Subscribe to my channel if you're not signed up, and see you guys in another video soon.